Welcome back to Respect, the Saka backup. Fun to say, hard to fix. The phrase has come about in the fanbase as a potential solution to the concerns about Saka's usage. The idea, as I understand it, is some feel Saka is overburdened, overplayed, there's concerns about what would happen if he got a long-term injury, and so on. Basically, we're over-reliant on him, and we need a backup. So today, I want to unpack that argument a bit, because personally, while I do think there is something valid in these concerns, I'm not sure we're all on exactly the same page about what the problem is, and therefore, by extension, the solution. And right at the top of this, I just want to remove something from the picture. I think there are still some who, when they say we need a backup for Saka, are referring to a right-sided forward who is signed to play behind Saka. They remain on the bench or in the squad, provide competition for him, and play when Saka is unavailable. They might play other positions, but their best position is right wing. If that's what you mean, let's rule that out. Because when you sign someone to be a backup in that way, you A, cap the level of talent and character you can bring in, because how on earth do you sell a top ambitious player your project if there's clearly a generational talent in front of them and you only see them playing this backup right wing role, unless you want to sell Saka eventually? B, you're putting in wages, time, resources, and development energy while blocking pathways for others for someone who is, in your ideal scenario, not going to play for 80 to 90% of the season. And C, you're depreciating an asset, as they're incredibly unlikely to sell on for anything like what you paid for them, and probably won't sign a new contract because they're not playing. Whatever the problem is, that's not the solution. However, I don't think that's what most people are saying. I think what's being suggested is genuine support for Saka. Options on that right-hand side, however that looks. They want to feel there's a way to rotate Saka when appropriate without a huge drop-off. And the options on the right-hand side currently feel a bit suboptimal, to be kind. And in fairness, I would say I feel fairly similar. So let's dive a bit deeper into the problems we're trying to address. First, there's the concern about overburdening him physically. While I feel there's definitely a collective kind of parental love towards Saka that colours this, I would be lying if throughout the season there weren't moments where I thought, Saka? Again? But I do think we underestimate just how little we know from an external perspective. Tom Allen, our head of sports science, has spoken in the past about how Arsenal compile stories about the players in data and track each player's physical journey over time, using around 75 variables from skeletal, metabolic, cardiovascular, and neuromuscular stresses to produce a stress score, while also looking at load and taking in thousands of other data points, including cutting-edge heart monitoring and gym data, all in the aim of assessing potential injury risk and physical impact. They also measure things literally as they happen in training and games. Arsenal's strength and conditioning and sports science team recently sat down with Stat Sports, our GPS data partners, this isn't an ad, don't worry, and spoke about how they use the live data from those vest things you've probably seen the players wearing actually in the training sessions, tracking things like distance covered, sprints, sprint speeds, high intensity distance, and so on, meaning they can tailor their responses to the players literally second by second. Alan once said, you name something and we're probably measuring it in some form. I'm sure the powers that be don't always make the correct call. But you, me, and Gooner Steve 343 do not have more information on Saka's current physical state than the staff at Arsenal. I promise. So when we see his name on the team sheet again and again, which is where I think a lot of this comes from, we have to trust it. There is something to throw into the problem pile here. He has played a lot of football. This isn't of zero concern. But I do feel the physical overburdening aspect of the conversation gets massively blown out of proportion without much actual evidence or information. I do hold a concern about the long-term repercussions of a lot of football so young, mentally as well, but I don't think Saka is reliant on a level of explosivity in the way a young Raheem Sterling might have been, who also played a lot at a young age and has kind of dropped off, in my view, because that physical edge is gone. Top players play every few days. It's a fact. And we also saw multiple instances last season of Saka not playing, training away from the group, and even coming home from England camps to manage his load. So they do think about this stuff. As the football calendar ramps up again next year, we do need to be conscious of it. But if your desire for this backup is purely down to physical concerns, I do think we need to take our collective parental cotton wool glasses off a touch. But probably the bigger part of the concern is about what we miss from a football perspective if he were to be out. And this is, of course, something I understand completely. He's so important. Saka is one of the most high-touch wide players in world football. His progressive passes received numbers and his touches in the penalty box and attacking third numbers tell you all about that. His decision-making in the final third is consistently good, and he's incredibly strong both physically and in terms of his combination play. When you remove Saka from the team, what you're really removing is a lot of Arsenal's game model. Shift it to the right, combine, connect, then either recycle, cut back, find the overlap, or flip to a hopefully underloaded left-hand side. What he is Arsenal's key outlet. He's our reference, the target to hit for Raya, Saliba and White's passes from behind the ball, and his ability to progress with carries up the touchline consistently is our lifeline at times, attracting 2 or 3 defenders in the process. His set-piece ability is key as well, and he's obviously also useful in the defensive shape too. Maybe too useful. We'll discuss that another time. That's before we even begin to discuss his production in terms of goals and assists. 34 GA last season in 3,865 minutes. A goal involvement every 113 minutes. So I think the real problem to solve here, it's what we do if Saka is out the team from a game model perspective. Because from that perspective, he might be our most important in possession player. Firstly, are we going to be able to replace all of that in one player? Simply, no. I literally don't think you could sign a player who does everything Saka does. It's like Tottenham's perennial Harry Kane backup issue. When you have a player of this quality, you literally can't avoid a drop-off when they come out the team. So accepting we can't replace what he brings to 100%, I think instead what we need to do is this. We need to ask which skills we can live without if Saka weren't to be in the team, and which skills we can't. Then look at the solutions for covering Saka and decide in that light whether that necessitates a signing or not. In summary, from Saka, we get all of these qualities on screen. For me, in our team right now, I think a lot of the progression can be made up elsewhere with carries, passes, going direct, whatever, and the output could be made up to some degree elsewhere too. Arsenal had a good share of goals and assists around the team last season. If Rice is on the pitch, we still get a degree of set-piece delivery, and we're so far ahead defensively, I sometimes wonder if we can let that slide a touch. 1v1 ability, there's other ways to beat players. The things I can't look past are quality under contact out wide, ball retention, the high touches, the recycling, the combinations, and the ball-to-feet outlet. It's just my opinion, but I think if we drop those out of the team, we lose that entire dynamic on our right-hand side. And in turn, we lose a level of purpose to our in-possession game. We lose identity. You could change formation and approach entirely, but I don't think that's how this manager works. He's not going to compromise, for example, on a high and wide winger on that side. He never has, and you can't convince me he will anytime soon. The sample we have when other key players are out is he's tried to broadly keep a similar structure, but make small tweaks. And besides, that right-hand side dynamic has been growing for 2 or 3 years at this point, and we know how important it is to us. If you stuck a totally different profile in there, say Martinelli, fine, but you're changing Ødegaard's instructions and zones, White's patterns and combinations, Saliba's angles, the number 9, there's so many knock-on effects. Maybe you do rip up this 2-3-year-old dynamic if Saka did his ACL. But for 3 or 4 games, or just to rotate him when needed, it's just my opinion, I do think the primary solution is to find a way of replicating those dynamics. So, back to it, is that internally or with a signing? I don't think the outlet straight line runner type on the right-hand side like Martinelli is the ideal solution. There's nothing wrong with that player in the correct dynamic with space to run into. He could progress the ball well and maybe provide some of the output, but I don't think Martinelli is at his best in close combination recycling. And after his performance against Everton on the final day, it's probably a no from me. I think Jesus at his best can bring some of the chaos, 1v1 capacity and bravery that Saka brings. But again, I don't trust his replication of Saka's ball retention and recycling quality that allows Arsenal to remain high and suffocate teams. I think there could be workarounds though. I am actually more convinced with Jesus than I am with, say, Martinelli. Trossard I think is best on the left, and the same with Reece, but I think he'll leave anyway. Smith Rowe is not the worst idea, maybe up there with Jesus, but I think you need a bit more running power around him and pace. We would lose a significant amount of threat in behind, and I think he'd struggle to do his best work on the touchline under contact. Fabio Vieira? I'm interested. I think he's actually quicker than people give him credit for, and I could see some of the combination stuff working well with him. I think he'd be able to play those 1-2s with Ødegaard and the reverse passes to White too. But really, I'm keen to see Ranieri. It's a totally different level, but I think it would be interesting to see if the output he's shown from out wide, for example in the U17s for England, could translate. He's extremely technically gifted, and I think a bit more secure under contact than, say, a Vieira. I could see White, Saliba and Ødegaard firing those passes into him out wide, and him dealing with it very well. Kozia Dubry looks interesting too. Internally then, we have a lot of options, and some I'm sure I've missed out. But none of them are perfect, so some might suggest a signing. But when you start asking questions about how the jigsaw fits together in terms of raising the floor on that side with a signing, there are some tough questions. Nico Williams has been mentioned. I like him, brilliant on the dribble, excellent at cutbacks. Can play both sides, started out on the right, but has been on the left this season, and he's right-footed. I'm not sure about his close combination play. I need to watch him in more full 90s, but he's healthy as an outlet, and he has some really good numbers on the progressive carries and receptions. Could definitely play on the right for us, and probably get us closer than our current internal options to cover for what we lose with Saka out. The problem with it is, if we sign him, I don't see us signing another winger. You may be happy with that, but Williams isn't really that killer goal scorer moments player that I think we're all kind of hoping for. He's far more get to the byline, whip in a cross, reverse pass, get you running backwards. He's also not coming to sit on the bench to wait for Saka to pull up, and we'd be kidding ourselves to think so. He plays for Spain, he's on €200,000 a week. Liverpool and Barca and so on have expressed an interest. He'd be coming to play. So really what we're asking with Nico Williams is, if we want him to raise the floor on the right, are we happy with him starting on the left? In his best ever season, he scored 6 goals. So maybe it's not a winger. Maybe we need to go for someone who's more of a midfield profile who can play out there. We need something in the midfield after all. Mohamed Kudus is an option. Kudus' carries are extraordinary and dynamic. And again, I think he'd give us more than our internal options currently to get closer to Saka's dynamics. His duel numbers are quite literally the best in Europe. But how much? We supposedly had an option to get him last summer for way cheaper, which is incredibly frustrating because I think West Ham will be asking for the best part of 100 million for him now, especially with Paquetá's issues. If we see him as the answer in midfield, then great. He can raise the floor out wide as well. But does a Kudus, Ødegaard, Rice midfield fill you with joy against the best teams in Europe? I know the duel numbers are exciting, but I have worries about him on the ball, out of possession tracking runners, and how he'd translate from a more transitional team. So are we going to spend £100 million to get 10% more than Jesus gives us out on the right-hand side on someone who doesn't even get in our most balanced 11? Eberechi Eze has a release clause of £60 million supposedly, which really interests me, but he's far more useful to my eye in central, penetrative zones. Out wide, I think he can get lost. His superpower is his bravery centrally. But it's not the worst idea in the world. I'm sure there's other options out there too that I don't know about or haven't watched enough, Bakayoko being one. But is he at that absolute top level yet? Not sure. We could go really rogue and see if Alphonso Davies fancies it out on the right-hand side. Let me know in the comments below the obvious pick that you can't believe I missed because I can't watch every single football match in the world and don't pretend to. But joking aside, let me know what you think. The point on the market is this. The jigsaw of signing someone good enough to give us more than our current options and raise that floor on the right-hand side, but not so good that they would need to play or would disrupt our other business with how much they cost, is a really hard one. I'm sure you could name a player that ticks more boxes than our internal options. The question is how it works from a deal and squad building perspective. Whatever you think of all this, I don't think there's a perfect option. So I want to return to something. Is it even a solvable problem? Are we asking the right question to say, who is Saka's backup? Is it even possible to have one? When you have arguably the best in the market in your team, these are the problems you're going to face. What's Man City's perfect solution when De Bruyne is out? Or Liverpool's with no Mo Salah? I feel sometimes the Saka backup conversation misses out the idea, however you go about it, that a drop-off is literally inevitable. If we lost Saliba, we'd drop off too. Rice as well. It's how it works with the best talent. No team in the world has a perfect solution for when their best players are out. No team. We're not special. That's not to say you can't try as best you can to raise that floor, and maybe we can. But the fact is, Bukayo Saka's top level is irreplaceable for England and Arsenal. There might be a reality where a signing helps us, an internal solution becomes really obvious, or even a young player surprises us. But in all that, we have to accept that we are reliant on Saka. And that, considering his talent, quality, maturity, consistency, and record in terms of injuries, is probably okay. Let's just hope we don't have to see the backup ideas reality tested anytime soon. If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.